Selfless Indian Danam versus Toxic Western Charity. Written in Rakesh Krishnan. As India leads in grassroots philanthropy, it's time to reject foreign aid that perpetuates exploitation and conversion agendas and return to the true spirit of giving rooted in tradition and selfless service. Western charity is little more than a well-disguised racket. Simply put, it operates as a trade, offering food and shelter to the poor in exchange for their loyalty or ideological submission. USAID's decision to allocate $21 million to increase voter turnout in India's 2024 elections exemplifies neo-imperialism, using foreign aid as a tool to interfere in the country's political landscape with the intent of unseating Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Name any Western charity, World Vision, Oxfam, or Teresa's Missionaries of Charity, and you'll find that they all prey on the vulnerable. Teresa herself was a fraud whose so-called charity work was primarily a front for converting Hindus to Christianity. While presenting herself as a servant of the poor, she was, in reality, a wolf in sheep's clothing, exploiting the destitute, stripping them of their faith, and subjecting them to degrading and outdated medical practices. Does India need foreign charity? For the answer, let's turn to former President Pranab Mukherjee. In 2012, while serving as finance minister, Mukherjee attempted to discontinue British aid amounting to £280 million. Dismissing the significance of the UK's contribution, he remarked in the Indian Parliament, "We do not require the aid. It is a peanut in our total developmental expenditure." Further, according to a leaked memo, a senior Indian diplomat proposed not to avail of any further British assistance because of the negative publicity of Indian poverty promoted by Britain's Department for International Development. However, London begged Delhi to keep taking the money because canceling the program would cause grave political embarrassment to Britain. Britain's ulterior motive was exposed when Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell said aid to India was partly about seeking to sell Typhoon jet fighters. Charity begins at home. The plain truth is that India is a net donor and doesn't require foreign aid of any kind. More importantly, grassroots donorship by private citizens is huge in India. The India Giving Report by Charities Aid Foundation says 84% of 836 million Indian adults give at least once a year. A 4-year study by the Central Statistics Office titled Non-Profit Institutions in India to measure the broader non-profit sector provides the most credible source for measuring the size of giving to non-profit sector organizations. The report reveals that the non-profit industry derives almost 70% of its income from private Indian donations, offerings, and grants. The industry has over 15 million volunteers, who account for over 85% of the sector workforce, far outnumbering the 2.7 million paid staff in associations. This indicates that at the grassroots, informal, and individual levels, charity in India is nearly 6 times greater than the organized sector, including Western aid organizations such as Oxfam, World Vision, and USAID. Dilemma versus Dharma. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that Western and Christian charities are precisely the kinds of institutions unworthy of your hard-earned money. Yet, countless ill-informed Hindus continue to donate to causes that ultimately work against their nation and Dharma. These Hindus typically fall into 2 categories. In the first category are those who donate out of a perverted sense of secularism, whereby they believe donating to World Vision or Oxfam will make them look progressive. They will casually leave envelopes addressed to them by these organizations around the house, so guests will notice that they are sponsoring the education of a 12-year-old tribal girl in Madhya Pradesh to 1,500 rupees a month. Ego-boosted and conscience-mollified, they can now head to the newest Mexican bar and blow 15,000 rupees on food and drinks. The second category comprises God-fearing but ignorant Hindus. They believe, despite stark evidence staring them in the face, that all religions are the same, and therefore, it doesn't matter what denomination they support. If you suggest they offer their money to Hindu charities like Ekal Vidyalayas instead of World Vision, they will say, all charities do similar work. Besides, I'm already committed to donating to World Vision for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, I'll check the progress and then make a decision. 5 years down the line, World Vision will mail them a photo of a 17-year-old allegedly studying at some computer science institute in Bina or Satna, and these pious bumpkins wouldn't have the slightest clue whether that claim is true or fake. If you tell them that Christian charities do the handiwork of Western intelligence agencies and want to break India, they will snap at you. So what? So many Hindus also want to destroy India. Such people are like a brick wall. No point banging your head against them. If you belong to either of the above categories, you should know what our ancient texts say about such mindless charity. Consequences of wrong charity. Bhagavad Gita says that charity, which is given at the wrong place and wrong time to unworthy persons, without showing respect or with contempt, is held to be of the nature of nescience. BG 17.22. An adverse consequence, dushphalam, follows when Danam is given to a morally degenerate and unworthy recipient, such as an atheist, a thief, or one who creates mischief. In other words, donating to World Vision, which is driven by the goal of undermining Hinduism and, by extension, the Indian nation, only leads to the accumulation of bad karma. Also, praising oneself for making a Danam, expressing regret after making a Danam, and repeatedly and unnecessarily mentioning the Danam will ultimately destroy all the good karma of the Danam. Hindu way. In traditional Indian texts, Danam is defined as the action of relinquishing ownership of what one considers or identifies as one's own and investing it in a recipient without expecting any return. Unlike Christianity, which says the rich can enter heaven as easily as a camel can pass through the eye of a needle, within Hinduism, wealth is regarded as a beneficial and positive value, just like love and morality, if pursued within limits. The highest praise in Hindu history is not reserved for the generous, but for those who regard wealth with indifference and can renounce all their belongings when the proper stage of life arrives. Charity is so deeply institutionalized in India that we have major literary works that deal exclusively with Danam. Midikara by Vijayanesvara is an 11th century canonical discussion and commentary on Danam, composed under the patronage of the Chalukya dynasty. In Theories of the Gift in Medieval South Asia, Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain, Maria Heim lists some of the major Sanskrit treatises that discuss ethics, methods, and rationale for charity in India. These include the 12th century Danam Kanda, Book of Giving, by Laxmitra of Kannauj, the 12th century Danam Sagara, Sea of Giving, by Balalasena of Bengal, and the 14th century Danakanda, which is part of the voluminous Chatter Varga Chinamani, the Gem of the Four Aims of Human Life, by Hemadiri of Devagiri. Ancient texts such as the Mahabharata and Dharma Shastras indicate that the notion of reciprocity, ingrained in Christianity, is not mentioned in the description of Danam. However, emotional and attitudinal reactions on the part of the recipient of Danam, closer to feelings of gratitude and respect for the donor, are mentioned as qualities of a worthy recipient. Danam can be performed in a myriad of ways. According to the ancient Dharmasutra of Gautama, before a man eats, he should give food first to guests, children, the sick, pregnant women, females in his household, and the old, as well as the menials. Lilavati Krishnan and V.R. Manoj write in the paper The Indian Psychology of Values, the concept of Danam, that Danam should be done as a routine activity because it involves the giving away of wealth that belongs to everyone. Everyone has an equal right to acquire wealth. It is the duty of everyone to ensure that others are getting the proper share that is their due. Whatever we consume in this world is only for the sustenance of the mortal body. This fact is common to everyone, so one must ensure that such sustenance is possible for everyone. Nothing truly belongs to us. We act as mere custodians of someone else's wealth. When the real owner, in the form of a recipient, comes along, we return what belongs to him with due respect. Hindu philanthropy is alive and kicking. For 1,700 of the past 2,000 years, India was the wealthiest country on the planet. The Islamic invasions did considerable damage to India's social fabric, temples, education system, and economy, but British rule caused the maximum economic destruction and the complete erasing of native education. Now, After 3 centuries of poverty, India is on the cusp of creating great wealth. With the explosion of private enterprise in India, major changes are happening in the country's philanthropy sector. India is again close to the pre-British tradition of trade and industry guilds supporting education and charitable works. Caroline Hartnell writes in Philanthropy in India that because of this explosive growth, Indian businesses are thinking about a long-term vision and a structured way of contributing to charity via a portfolio of investments and interventions. Many of these givers are first-time entrepreneurs, often tech entrepreneurs, who are not from traditional wealthy families. Many of these are bringing their intellectual and social capital and financial capital. They have generated a lot of wealth and are now looking to give back to the society that allowed them to prosper, seeing themselves as stewards of wealth rather than owners. A UBS report titled Revealing Indian Philanthropy points out that many of these entrepreneurs, having grown up without wealth, are less concerned about preserving wealth for the next generation. Their relationship to the wealth they create leads to more freedom in distributing it. For instance, Kalpana Morparia, Chief Executive Officer of JP Morgan India, has chosen to outsource her philanthropic initiatives to the Bharti Foundation, giving 1.5 rupees crore to set up and operate a school in Haryana. Tapping into this sentiment, billionaire philanthropist Mohandas Pai of the Manipal Education Group and former Infosys CFO says every billionaire should contribute 2% of their wealth to charity. Many of Pai's friends and former colleagues have contributed to his Akshaya Patra Foundation, which has a balance sheet of over 200 rupees crore and over 5,000 employees. The foundation aims to feed 3 million children every day by 2025. Alongside the new givers, members of the old order continue to do good work. For instance, Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams, TD, which manages one of the wealthiest temple trusts in the world, established schools in its vicinity as far back as 1876. Today, the TTD manages a number of explicitly social endowment schemes and runs at least 22 educational institutions in and around Tirupati, in addition to an Ayurveda college, a vocational training center, and a university hospital. Such religious institutions continue to receive huge, but mostly unreported donations every year. Time to banish the conversion crowd. In the backdrop of such an extensive network of charitable organizations across the country and a history of selfless charity since ancient times, it is clear that India doesn't need the presence of foreign charities, which are basically probing arms of neocolonialism and agents of religious conversions. Just as in an earlier era, the Sufis and Jesuits were the scouts of Islamic invaders and European imperialists respectively. Hindus lacked the Kshatrabad, a sense of the enemy, to understand the motives of these early Muslims and Christians and allowed them in, and consequently lost their freedom for hundreds of years. The least we can do is learn from our own past mistakes and ban today's foreign interlopers. Vladimir Putin has set a fine example by ordering USAID and the British Council out of Russia. This was because they interfered in Russia's internal affairs. Translation: spying. These two organizations are likely doing the same in India. The Chinese do not allow such organizations to even step into their country. So why should India alone allow foreign charities to create and promote mischief? To its credit, the Narendra Modi government has choked the funding of thousands of NGOs and charities carrying out anti-national activities. However, this isn't enough, as crooks always find a way around the law. A complete ban on all foreign charities and NGOs should be imposed immediately. Many Indian liberals have a favorite catchphrase, "What will the world think?" For more than 70 years, the hero of these liberals, Jawaharlal Nehru, spoke the same words. What will the world think if India takes back its own territory in Kashmir? His dithering allowed a much weaker Pakistan to grab a third of Kashmir, leading to decades of terrorism in that state. What Indians should worry about is that the survival of India as a nation is at stake here. Just say no. Finally, if you had promised to support foreign charities and would like to stop but are confused, the ancient seer Gautama offers a solution to this conundrum in his Dharma Sutra. When a request is made for an unlawful adharma purpose, he should not give, even if he has already promised to do so.